What's up everyone? In this video, I'm going to be talking about one of the best budget lenses for the Panasonic GH5, and that's the Lumix G 25mm f1.7. If you're new here, my name is Caleb, and I've been doing freelance video production since 2012, but this channel is to help you make your own videos, whether you just started or you've been making them for a while, whether you use the GH5 or any other camera. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button. All right, here's a few things I want to go over before we actually get into the meat of the video. First, make sure you comment your favorite lens down in the comment section. I want to see what you're using to make your videos with your GH5. Second is that I'm talking about the Lumix 25mm f1.7, which I don't actually own, but I borrowed from a friend, Jonah, who you know from our Lumix G9 versus GH5 video. You can check that video out right up here. So Jonah, thank you for letting me use that lens. For you watching, make sure you go check Jonah out on Instagram and his YouTube page. I've got them linked in the description. And the third thing is that I'm actually collaborating with Ben from the UK on this video talking about the Lumix 25mm f1.7. So I'm gonna link his video down in the description. Make sure you check that out. And while you're there, toss him a sub. You'll get some valuable content about the Micro Four Thirds system and the GH5. So one of the cool things we talked about while planning out this collaboration was picking each other's locations to film with the Lumix 25mm. So I got on Google Maps and picked out a location for him to film some of his B-roll with the Lumix 25mm close to where he lives. And then he did the same for me. Now I'm not gonna tell you what I picked for him. You need to go check out his video, but here's our phone call and the spot that he picked for me.
Hey Caleb, how's it going?
Hey Ben, how's things across the ocean?
Brilliant. We've got a nice sunny day, which is so good.
All right.
I've been on Google Maps, Caleb. I found a location for you. I think you're gonna enjoy it. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
It's Falls Park.
Falls Park, that's a great spot. I love it. There's gonna be a lot of great shots there.
It looks amazing.
All right.
Good luck with it anyway, Caleb.
Yeah, well, I'll head out and I'll go start shooting.
Well, see you soon.
Yep, bye. So thanks so much, Ben, for that location. It's a great spot in the city that I live in here in South Dakota. Thankfully, it's nice out. It's not winter yet. So here's a little montage that I put together while filming out at Falls Park with the Lumix 25mm f1.7. But before I show you this montage, I just want to say thank you to my friend Cami, who was willing to be in this video. She is one of the best photographers in the state of South Dakota, and she specializes in film photography, so she had this awesome camera with her, and I'm gonna link her Instagram down in the description, so make sure you go give her a follow.
Can you show me if the season is ending? Is this hardship surrendered? Throw this curse in the sea. See
All right, at the end of this video, Ben and I actually sat down to have a chat over Zoom to talk about our experience filming with this lens, the Lumix 25mm f1.7. So make sure you stick around for that, but here's a few things about this lens. So this Lumix 25mm f1.7 is a tiny lens, but after using it for a little bit, I can say it's actually a pretty mighty lens as well. The focal range of 25mm is going to give you that 50mm look, which is a great focal length, especially for any type of like portrait type work. Now I know that I'm taking this from a video perspective, but having any type of talent on screen, you're gonna get a great looking image, especially of people at 50mm. But with the 50mm, it can also be a little tight, especially if you're used to shooting wider, kind of like I am, kind of in that 12 to 18 range. It can feel a little tight, so you'll definitely need to maneuver yourself around to make sure you're framing everything up right. But one of the killer things of this Lumix 25mm f1.7 being a budget lens is that max aperture of f1.7. It also has a minimum aperture of f22. But man, with that max aperture of f1.7, you were able to get some really nice looking depth of field. Now, while I was using it, what I could tell was the sweet spot, at least for how I was shooting, was kind of in that f4 to f6 range. But I really like the depth of field that you're able to get with this lens, especially on the GH5 when it's sometimes a challenge to get that depth of field. One of the things though is I did notice that when it was wide open at f1.7, I had a little trouble finding and keeping focus just because it's so narrow. But the depth of the image was fantastic and really more than enough. One of the things while I was shooting with this is I did have a variable ND filter on because I felt like in really a real world scenario, you're gonna have an ND filter on, or you should at least have an ND filter on. So I was able to keep my aperture from that 1.7 to like the f6 range. And so outdoors, that really helped with some of that depth of field as well. Now, like I said, this lens is really small. So the front thread size is 46mm, which could actually lead to some issues on finding different filters like variable NDs. But thankfully there's some step up rings, which I had to use to get that variable ND filter on. So not only is this lens small, it does not weigh very much, coming in, according to some websites, at 4.4 ounces. I didn't actually weigh it myself, just looked it up. So if you're wondering what that's like, it's, you know, less than a full-grown hamster. So if you don't want a full-grown hamster on the front of your camera, this lens might be for you. Another thing is this lens is made of plastic. It does have a metal mounting ring, but overall the lens is pretty much all plastic. And with that comes a few different things, like it is not going to be weather sealed. So if you live in conditions where you need a fully weather sealed setup, this lens might not be the best option for you. So as far as low light performance goes with the Lumix 25mm f1.7, I was actually pretty pleased with the results I was getting. Part of that is because of the max aperture at being 1.7, and also for the size of the lens, I felt like I wasn't getting too much noise in the overall image in some of the low light shots I took. Not that it makes a huge difference, but just the size of the lens and, you know, the filter thread, that type of thing. I thought maybe it wouldn't perform as well in low light, but overall I was pretty happy with it. I just set up some shots of me, you know, pretending to take some pictures at the falls. And some of these shots I was pretty happy with the low light performance. Now I had some street lights and path lights and the falls were lit up, so I had a little bit of that to work with. And so it wasn't a completely dark setting, but I felt like if you're in a completely dark setting, you probably wouldn't be using the GH5 anyway. So I felt like for the conditions I was in, I was getting a pretty good image and overall performance was pretty good. And I think we all know this, that prime lenses are usually better in low light situations because of that max aperture. You're able to push it just a little bit further. And for these low light tests, I obviously took the ND filter off and I was shooting wide open at 1.7 with an ISO of 800. And if you want to see a little bit more of how I set up my GH5 for low light settings, I'll link the video right up top. All right, here's a few things that that might be, you know, deal breakers or something while using the 25mm f1.7. And the first thing is that there is no image stabilization built into the lens. So you'll fully be relying on the IBIS of the GH5, which isn't a bad thing, but there are a few lenses out there that have built-in stabilization, and then you have dual image stabilization with the GH5. All right, one of the other things is that it is a focus by wire lens. I don't know what it is, but I always struggle with focus by wire lenses. It's like I just shoot right past the focal point. I personally never use autofocus on the GH5, so I'm always manual focusing. But if you use autofocus, it might be an option with this lens. So focus by wire, you know, I don't love it, but for the price, I think it'd be all right. Another possible deal breaker is that this lens is fully made of plastic other than the metal mount ring. So it's gonna feel really light and maybe a little cheap in your hand. But don't get me wrong, I loved using this lens, and for a lighter setup, I mean, it's totally fine. But a big deal breaker for me personally is that it is not weather sealed. In the place that I live in South Dakota, the weather can be kind of unpredictable, especially when it comes to winter. So having some kind of weather sealed system is important to me. And I know it's not necessary for everyone, but having that weather seal on the GH5 is something that I find valuable. Overall, I think the Lumix 25mm f1.7 is a good value for the money that you're spending. I think it's the type of lens that you'd want to have in your kit, whether you're a beginner learning on a prime or you're a professional and you want that 50mm look, a great portrait lens, and some great depth of field. I think this lens is good for if you're shooting interviews. Like I said, having somebody on camera with this lens, it looks really good. Or if you just want to get some macro shots. I thought it held up really well whenever you were really close to something. So if you want to get some of those macro shots, you're going to have to get close, but it held up really well, I thought. All right, here's my conversation with Ben about using the Lumix 25mm in these different shooting situations. Hey, Ben, man, this was fun collabing, talking about the Lumix 25mm f1.7. So how was your experience shooting with it?
I loved it. I really enjoyed using the lens. I've got quite a range of lenses over the time filming weddings, but it was nice to use this one. And it was nice to test whether with an entry-level lens, whether you could get good results. And I was really impressed with it, to be honest, really impressed.
Yeah. You know, I was actually really happy using it. You know, I'm used to using zoom lenses, so I don't use a ton of prime lenses. But, you know, this really reminds me of the Canon Nifty 50. Like, so it's so much like that lens.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's small, compact, light. It's so much like that Canon Nifty 50. You know, that 50mm from Canon.
It does bring a lot of the fun back, I think. It's just,
absolutely.
Yeah, it brings you in the moment and you're having to move rather than relying on the zoom range.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things, you know, I talked about is like, it's so easy for me to zoom in and out. So it's a whole nother ball game using a prime lens and kind of like maneuvering yourself and situating yourself to get the frame right. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And it is a boost, I suppose, isn't it? 'Cause most zoom lenses, apart from if you're going with the Sigma or if you're going with the Leica 10-25, you're 2.8 or higher aperture. So it's nice having that 1.7.
Now, one of the things I really liked was the depth of field with this lens. Did you have much experience with the depth of field? Like, what was that like for you?
I was really impressed. Really impressed. I felt like it was enough. I have got some primes that I use for weddings that go up to 1.2, which is lovely. But 1.7, I found was enough. To be honest, I found it was enough. And if you're getting good lighting and you're finding good composition, you're going to get incredible results. And I was, really impressed. I think it's a great lens if someone's starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of found like the sweet spot was kind of like that f5, maybe like f4 to f6, kind of in that range.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, like what I was seeing from that 1.7, and I was shooting kind of like, you know, at golden hour, as much gold as we were getting with like the wildfires that we're having here and everything, but golden hour, and it looked pretty good. I thought so. It looked pretty sharp from the times that I could get it in focus, and focus is one of the issues I wanted to bring up. How did you like the focus ring, and were you having trouble with it? I personally was having trouble with it.
I found it okay. I guess it's never going to be as nice as a focus ring on a normal lens with the hard stops.
Yep.
I did do some rack focusing, and it was okay as the standard of fly-by-wire lenses, but yeah, never gonna match an old school lens on your Canon or your Focus.
Yeah, absolutely. The focus by wire I've like always kind of struggled with, even with the Lumix 12 to 35. I don't know if you use that lens very often.
Oh,
but
yeah.
There's certain points, that one I've gotten a little bit more used to, but there's just certain points where I just miss focus. Like I just go right past it. And so I just need to bring it back, and set the shot up again, that type of thing. But overall, this little lens is tiny, but I really think it's a mighty lens, an awesome budget lens, and a great lens to start off on, like you said.
Oh, definitely. I think it's brilliant value when you're starting out, and a brilliant way if you're starting to learn about videography and you want the cinematic look without spending a fortune. I think it's a great one to go for. And one thing I was going to ask you, Caleb, actually, and I know you mentioned you were at the golden hour. How was low light? Was it? I was shooting in daytime, so I couldn't test out low light so much. But what was your experience of that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things with low light is I was actually pretty impressed with how some of the image turned out. Now, sometimes, like, I think I don't know if this is just like a mental thing that I have or if it's actually the case, but sometimes with, smaller lenses and like smaller filter sizes, I almost feel like they're a little bit noisier when it comes to low light. And I don't, like I said, it might just be a mental thing for me. I'm not totally sure. But I was actually really impressed with the low light in this lens. Now, I was down at the falls, which you picked for me. Yeah. And
how was that?
It was great. There are some street lights and, like path lights, that type of thing. So I did have a little bit of light to work with, and I was not in total darkness. And like one of the things I said in my video, like if you're in total darkness shooting, you're probably not using a GH5 anyway.
No.
But I was pretty impressed with some of the footage and low noise. I was about at 800 ISO. I don't really go above 800 ISO.
No.
And I was pretty much wide open at 1.7, and I was liking the results. I thought the image looked really good.
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of what I do is weddings, and a lot of that is low light, and it's definitely a lens I would consider taking to a wedding. I've got an Olympus one I use that is a 1.2.
Yeah.
But if I was starting out, or if I had a second shooter, I would have no hesitation bringing that lens along. I think it would do a really nice job.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things I wanted to just chat with you about is how did you notice anything with like stabilization? Now, this lens does not have stabilization built into it, but I felt like with the GH5 and the IBIS and the GH5, I thought things handled just fine.
Yeah.
What was your experience with that?
Me too. Yeah, I think it's a really versatile focal length, and I think at that sort of focal length, you can get good results. And in my video, I did a lot of walking with the camera as well. There was some wobble, but I kind of felt it was manageable. And a lot of the shots I filmed were at 50p, and I slowed them down. So when you add that in as well, I was quite pleased with it. It was quite a natural kind of rocking motion, and I think it's really cool. I think if you're filming solid shots where you just stood still, that the lock-on IS, what's it called?
Yep.
Yeah.
I know what
you know the one.
about.
Yeah.
I can't think of it off the top of my head.
The IS where it locks it like a tripod is rock solid. And the fact that if you put it on the regular IBIS, you can do some walking. It was spot on. Such a good lens. Yeah, really impressed.
Okay, we talked about this a little bit, but who do you think this lens is for? This 25mm f1.7 from Lumix. Who is this lens for?
I think it could be for a lot of people. I think it's a lens that you could start off with and learn a lot with, and then even when you're becoming more advanced and you're taking on bigger projects, maybe more professional projects, I do think it's a lens that if you're wanting to travel light, you would still take with you because it's so small, light, and convenient. And it just fits the whole ethos of the Micro Four Thirds system. Just small light, high quality, and no fuss. So I think mainly beginners, but I think even as you grow with your camera, you'll still want this lens. It will still have a place in your heart, sort of thing. So
yeah. Absolutely. just like that Canon Nifty 50, man.
It is.
Like
you can never let go.
Such a great lens. I don't know what it is about it, but all right. Do you have any final thoughts about this lens or this experience?
I found it really fun. I wanted to thank you for choosing such a great location. Elveston Castle was amazing. Yeah. Had a lot of fun there.
Hey man, if I could visit, that would be I'd like to go there. That's for sure.
Oh, I'd be the same with where you went. The falls.
Right on.
It looked amazing in the photos, and I know you said you've not got any castles in America, but we've not got anything like that location in England. So we've both picked quite locations, I guess we would like to visit because they're so different. But yeah,
awesome. Well, man, this has been fun. Thank you for the collaboration and the review on this lens and taking a look at it. It's been great doing this, man.
Oh yeah, the same, Caleb, and hopefully we might be able to work together again in the future at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man.
Well, have a nice
Catch you later.
See you, Caleb.
Yep. Bye-bye. All right, Ben, again, it was great collaborating with you. So I'm going to have Ben's video linked down in the description. Make sure you go check that video out, check out his talking points, and toss him a sub. And also, don't forget to comment your favorite lens that you use on the GH5. I'd love to see what lenses you're using and the results that you're getting with them. All right, y'all, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.